Hello and welcome to this week's lesson where we're going to be drawing with scissors in the style of Matisse. If you're not familiar with Matisse's cutout work, here's a few examples and you'll find plenty more on the internet. He was very prolific and worked this way for many years of his life towards the end of his career. So for the main exercise in this lesson, we're going to focus on a piece of Matisse's work entitled White Alga on Red and Green Background from 1947. So we're going to guide you through step by step in how to make your own version of this piece, and then afterwards we're going to give you some ideas of how you can make some of your own original compositions inspired by Matisse's work. So before you can start cutting into the paper, you need to create the coloured paper first of all. So Matisse would paint large sheets of paper in different colours rather than using pre-coloured paper, but you can use coloured paper if you've got it. But you'll just get a nicer finish and it'll be a more authentic Matisse look if you paint the paper yourself. So we are painting 2 sheets of A4 paper here, so one in red poster paint and one in green poster paint. You can use any paint that you've got, so watercolours or poster paint or acrylics, that's fine. Just make sure the paper is reasonably thick. It's best to work on a sort of heavyweight cartridge paper. You'll probably find that you need 2 or 3 thin coats of colour to get a nice coverage. Once your paper's dry, you're also going to need a good pair of scissors, a pencil, rubber, a ruler and some glue like Pritt stick is best. So once your paper is dry, take the red piece of A4 paper, turn it over and draw a line on the back in pencil. So we've gone for just a ruler's width here, which is about 3 centimetres. You may want to make this slightly bigger, maybe 4 centimetres, because you're going to use this offcut of paper to create the red shapes that are going to go on top of the white shape. So just draw a line and cut off that piece and put it to one side to use later. Next, you need to take your green piece of A4 paper that you've painted and just lay it on top of your red background and mark out a shape roughly the size you want it. We're starting off a little bit bigger than we want and then we can adjust it down afterwards. So this is for the green shape in the middle of the composition. If you look at Matisse's work, you'll notice that the background is divided approximately into 3. So you can make your green piece approximately 1/3 of the size of the background. We're just going to draw out a shape in pencil, cut it out, lay it onto the background, don't glue anything down at this stage. And just check the size, and we're going to just trim a little bit off one edge just to make it a little bit more proportional. We're also going to cut out a little rectangular notch in one corner to reflect the green shape in Matisse's work. When you're happy with the green shape and you've just laid it onto your paper to check the position, you can glue it into place. Now this bit's really important. People often overlook the skill in gluing, but if you make any collages you'll know that gluing properly is essential to creating a really nice finish with your work. So this is how I want you to glue this down. Take a spare piece of paper and turn over your green shape so you've got the back facing. Using your Pritt stick, go round the edge of the shape. Make sure that the glue is not too thick. If it's a big shape, you can also put a big cross across the middle, but don't apply glue to the whole surface area of the back. The edges round the sides is the most important bit. So lifting your green shape off of your scrap paper, move the scrap paper out of the way, get your red background and position your shape where you want it to be. You'll notice that in Matisse's composition there is a bigger red space at the bottom, so we've put ours in a similar place. Now this is the crucial bit. Take another scrap piece of paper, not the bit that you've glued on, a clean piece. Lay it over the top of the shape and push down with your hands, the palm of your hands, so that way you'll get a really nice finish and you won't have fingerprints on your work or you won't be smudging anything. A top tip I got from a member of our team is actually to use an old magazine, you know, the types you get free with supermarkets, and you can use one page to glue one piece and then turn it over, so you're constantly working on a fresh page when you're applying your glue, and that way you'll keep all your pieces nice and clean. This white shape that we're going to draw on the paper needs to really fill the background. So when you look at Matisse's work, the white algae reaches from the top to the bottom and almost touches the sides. So before we even start to draw the shape, we're just going to fold over a ruler's width on the A4 piece of white. That way we're working on the same size paper as the red background. And then when you start sketching out in pencil, really make sure you go from the top to the bottom and to both sides with your shapes. So using a pencil, I want you to draw out the algae shape that you can see on Matisse's composition. Now you don't have to do this exactly the same at all, just make it similar so that you've got lots of open space, so that when you cut it out you'll see a lot of the background coming through. So we're just sketching this out in pencil. You can see that we've made a first draft and then we're going over with the pencil just to adjust some of those shapes till we're really happy with it. And then we can rub out any of the pencil lines that we don't want before cutting out the shape. This can be quite fiddly to cut out, but it's an absolutely fantastic exercise for getting children to develop their scissor skills. What we often suggest is that you cut out the shape roughly first and then go back over it and cut it out neater. So cut twice, once rough and once neat. Before you glue this bit into place, just really carefully rub out any pencil lines. Try to hold the paper taut with your other hand when you're rubbing out, or alternatively you can turn it round to have the paper the other way around so you won't see any pencil marks. It doesn't matter if it's the other way around to Matisse's work. This is more about practicing your cutting and your gluing, thinking about colour and composition and how everything works together. When you're happy with your white algae shape, then you need to glue that in place using the same technique we showed you before. So laying the paper down onto a fresh piece of scrap paper, applying the glue round the edges and putting it into place, covering it with a clean sheet of paper and then pushing down with the palms of your hands. Finally, you can use your red strip of paper that you cut off right at the beginning to cut the shapes that are going to go on top of the algae. So just cut off a small square first of all that you can cut into 4 and create the diamond shapes that go up the centre of the algae, and then you should have just enough left, if you're careful, to create the red petal shapes that are placed on top of the algae. So you'll see we've actually cut our strip in half lengthways and then drawn out the shapes really carefully, tucking into one another so that we can get the most out of the paper that we have. When you're gluing on small bits like this, it's best just to rub the shape over the top of the glue. Otherwise you'll end up with glue all over the surface of the shape. Again, don't forget to place a clean piece of paper over the top and push down on that rather than pushing directly with your fingers onto the work. Yep, that's this piece finished. So you will have learnt an awful lot in copying this piece of Matisse's work in terms of how to handle the paper, how to cut, how to glue properly so that you've got a nice clean finish, and thinking about colour and composition. So this piece is obviously in red and green, which are complementary colours, which is why it just looks so incredible and balanced and beautiful. But really what you want to be doing is taking these skills and now applying it to your own work. So that's where the creativity will come in when you're creating something original and something new. So going back to your green paper offcut from earlier, you should have quite a lot of paper left. You may want to look at other pieces of Matisse's work for inspiration, so having a look at the shapes that he creates, but they are very organic shapes, often heavily influenced by natural forms, so you'll find lots of leaves and sort of curvy shapes with lots of negative space. So something Matisse would do is that he would cut directly into the colour. So give it a go. It doesn't matter if it goes wrong. You're just trying something new. So rather than drawing the shape on the back of the paper and then cutting round it, just take your scissors and draw with your scissors directly into the colour to create a shape. You'll notice that Matisse used to use the offcuts. In fact, they're not offcuts, they're just as important as the shape that you've cut out. So they create a negative shape, so you'll have a positive and a negative shape, and you can put both of those into your composition. You may want to play around with a black background or a different colour background. You may just want to work in pairs of complementary colours, or you might want to include a wider range of colours. There's no rules here, I just want you to experiment. But with your small piece of green, you should be able to create 2 or 3 A5 original studies inspired by Matisse's work. I've also made 3 little studies here in pairs of complementary colours, again inspired by Matisse's work. They're not direct copies of any of his pieces, but you'll notice some of the shapes are similar to the shapes he uses in his work. So we've got the purple and yellow, the orange and blue, and the red and green. So have a play around yourself, drawing with scissors directly into colour. Always look at a range of Matisse's work to give you some inspiration. So if you have a go at this, I'd love to see what you create. Please send us photos of your work so we can share them on Facebook and Instagram.